Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming to this talk. I'm pumped to be here. Appreciate being here. The title is a little long-winded, so basically what we're going to talk about is developer education. Basically, the skills we learn kind of in school and the skills that we actually need for the workplace, and there's a bit of a gap in between those. My name is Mike. I am not in the space industry. I'm in the developer education industry. So being here is kind of out of my realm a little bit. I'm learning lots though. I come from academia, so I was started teaching when I was really young. I was fortunate enough. I was 23 years old. I just finished my master's. A professor retired at the university I was working at. I was working as a developer, and they asked me to fill in. They said, "Hey, can you teach this AI course?" Because I just did a lot of AI in my master's, and I said, "Sure." And so I started teaching, and then I never stopped. So I've been teaching part time since. I did work towards my PhD. I got that, and then I did my CISSP as well too. And I wanted to teach full time, and so I did. I taught full time for about 3.5 years. Did not love it, so I went back to teaching part time, and I moved into the industry. So I work for a company called Sneak. We're a cybersecurity company. We do a lot of SaaS and DAST, and part of that is a subset called Sneak Learn, which I work for. And this isn't a sales pitch by any means, because Sneak Learn is free. And so I'm here to talk to you about kind of developer security and the gaps that are there. So I've seen education from all angles. We've all been students before, so that's covered. I worked as a part-time faculty member. I still do. Worked as a full-time, which I told you about. I also worked as a staff member at a university, so I was a developer for a long time. Built a custom student information system. We built an employee portal, student portal, online registration. Built a lot of cool stuff from scratch. And then I moved into an admin role. So I was like an engineering manager. I oversaw the whole dev team. And then I moved into a director role. So I was director of IT for a little while before moving. This is an email I got, and I know it's maybe a little bit hard to read from the back here, but it says, "Hi, Professor. I have to say there's a bit of a learning gap as far as the courses I've had available through institution. Significant shortcoming here, in my opinion, is security. Do you have any recommendations for materials to help me out?" The student was graduating. This was an email I received just before they graduated. The issue was they went their full 4 years of undergrad without taking a cybersecurity course. I happened to be teaching a course, distributed systems at the time, where I injected a little bit of security into there. I talked about how HTTPS actually works. We talked a little bit about like the Diffie-Hellman algorithm and stuff like that. Students were really interested in that, but that was like a 2-week portion of a 15-week course, and they were kind of left wanting more. So I realized this was emails from a number of years ago, but I realized there's a huge gap here that students just aren't learning about. Like they're going into this industry 4 years of paying tuition, getting a computer science degree, and not knowing a thing about cybersecurity. So some common questions that I get from students, understand random numbers, but how do I actually generate a secure, unique ID? I know I should be hashing a password, which a lot of students don't know that, but how do I actually do the authentication portion of it, and where do I go to learn about security? These are just some common questions that I get from computer science students in all years. Who here has a computer science or computer engineering or software engineering degree? Okay, and now who here took a security course as part of that program? Okay, so some people did. That's good. You are definitely in the minority of that. I'd be curious of where you got your degrees from. But typically, I get a lot of hands that go down at that point, because not a lot of people have taken cybersecurity as part of their studies. You get some common courses throughout the computer science curriculum. Your introductory to programming. You might learn like Java or Python, maybe C#, depending where you're at, or C++. Algorithms course, a database course, systems analysis, and lots of math courses, of course. Those are common throughout any degree program that you see. So if you go to almost any school across North America and you check out the curriculum, you're going to see kind of these courses as part of there. But what you're not going to see are security courses, at least dedicated security courses. Now, there are boot camps, there are graduate certificates that kind of specialize in this. So you might get like we call them G-certs in cybersecurity, like a 1-year program. Those are great, but they're requiring the students to not only do a 4-year degree, but now do an additional year of studies, pay an additional year, and so it's more money for them to spend and more learning for them to do. So the forgotten course here is cybersecurity. I was teaching a fourth year course, and I showed you that email, but besides that, I was teaching a fourth year course. Again, it's fourth year, second semester. These students are getting ready to graduate. The course belonged to a full-timer. Actually, who here has ever taught before? Okay, so some people, if you've ever taught in like the college or the university setting as a part-timer or adjunct, you might have been given a course that belonged to somebody else, and you're looking at their material, and if you're lucky enough, it's good material. Uh, most of the time, the material is extremely outdated. Kind of pulling the curtain here to show you what's going on behind higher education. So this was the situation I was in. The course originally belonged to a full-timer. They gave me the course to teach. Material was very outdated. I feel like as a professor, the material that I teach is a reflection on me. And so the old material, I just wasn't comfortable teaching. So I kind of had to go through and update a lot of it. And I wanted to introduce cybersecurity into it. So I started with a very basic review of cryptography. And I talked about encryption and hashing and the difference, one way and two way and all that kind of stuff. And I thought this was the basics. I thought, fourth year, second semester, these students surely know, the difference between encryption and hashing. And I really saw kind of blank stares. So I thought I was doing a review, and students were just, they weren't following along at all. So I'm like, okay, my basics that I'm teaching, I really kind of have to go back further and just do a review. And so this was their first time ever with cybersecurity and kind of understanding how it all works. I did a poll in the class. There was a fairly large class, so I did a poll online to try to get a gauge of where students are. So I said, who here understands how HTTPS works, the difference between encryption and hashing, the concept of CIA, so confidentiality, integrity, and availability, and what personally identifiable information was. And the results were terrible. Nobody knew anything about anything. And so I revamped the course once already because I received it from a full-timer. I revamped it again on the fly just to sort of go back to the basics even more. I taught at a new place. So I was teaching part-time. I taught at a few different institutions. I'll just say this now, I'm Canadian, and so these are all Canadian institutions that I taught at. And we talk about the weather. This is hotter than it will ever get where I'm from, and so this weather is insane for me. So I've been fortunate enough to teach at multiple institutions, and results have been the same. It's not like this one institution was an anomaly. It's been all the same. So I'm getting all these blank stares and all these classes that I teach, and I'm realizing, okay, there's a real problem here with cybersecurity, and there's a real problem with the curriculum that's being taught. I was fortunate enough, again, to teach at a high school. And so this was part of a dual credit course. So students get credits for the high school credit, and they also get a college credit as well too. In Canada, we have colleges and universities. They're different. I know in America they're a little bit interchangeable, but so these students could get a dual credit, which just gets them an extra step ahead when they go to higher ed. The result was the same, obviously, but it was actually worse. And so not only did I have students just not understanding, I had students just didn't even care about this. Cybersecurity and computer science wasn't even an interest to them. They're just taking the course mainly because they have to, not because they want to. And so I realize there's a huge issue. 50% of high school students offer a foundational computer science course, which sounds really good. This is for North America. But 5.8% of students are actually enrolled in those courses. So very few students are actually taking computer science. Forget about anything to do with cybersecurity. Few students are actually taking computer science. And so that's an issue that we have to look at kind of beyond this topic here. How do we get more students interested in this field so we can just kind of build up the skill set and build up the amount of people graduating so we can fill this employment gap that we have. Okay, so we'll talk about some stats here a little bit. So again, Canada has universities and colleges. They're a little bit different. So of the top Canadian universities, 87% of them actually have a dedicated security course. So it's a really good number. For colleges, it's a little worse. 33% of top colleges have a dedicated security course available. And then for universities, it's perfect. The top universities, I think I looked at the top 15 US universities, all of them have a dedicated security course available. So why does this talk matter, right? If the numbers are good, who cares? But just because a course is available doesn't mean students actually have to take it. There's electives and requirements. Electives, and I know everyone here is probably aware of this, but electives are courses that you choose to take. Requirement courses are core courses or courses that you have to take. Of the Canadian universities that offer a cybersecurity course, only 13% of them actually require you to take it as part of your studies. For the colleges, so 33 required it. Of those 33, so a third of a third, actually require students to take that course. And for the US institutions, only 10% of those institutions require you to take a cybersecurity course. They all offer it, but you don't actually have to take it. So looking at these numbers, you have potentially a lot of graduates who graduate without ever taking a computer science security course because they never had to. It just wasn't a requirement. So all this kind of builds up the narrative here that we recognize that this is a problem. Students just aren't learning about cybersecurity, and this is creating a huge skills gap, and it's kind of putting the onus on the employer to get their employees trained. So electives and requirements, I'll kind of, again, pull the curtain back a little bit. So electives, again, they're optional for students. They don't have to take them. Electives will be like for when I did computer science, I had to take X amount of like humanities courses, business courses. It just becomes like a little bit more well-rounded, right? You take all these different courses. But electives in the field, so if you're a computer science student, you have to take your core computer science courses. You'll also have to take electives within that domain. So you have to take elective computer science courses. But those electives are at the discretion of the faculty. And what that means is if you have a faculty member on staff who is researching AI, you're likely to get a course on AI. If you have somebody, researching blockchain, you're likely to get a blockchain course. If you don't have any professors who are researching or knowledgeable in cybersecurity, you're just not going to get cybersecurity courses. The electives are really at the discretion of the faculty. Fortunately enough, at the institutions I was teaching at, I kind of became the cybersecurity guy. I have that background. I would create a cybersecurity course. It would be offered as an elective, so students wouldn't have to take it. The popularity was really good. There was an appetite for it. Students would take it. But if I wasn't available to teach that course the next semester because of scheduling conflicts, I have to get courses. I have to get courses taught at night because I work during the day. And so if the school wasn't able to accommodate that and said, no, it's available at 10 a.m. on Monday, Wednesday, I'd say, well, I'm not available. They wouldn't offer the course. And so students wouldn't get a chance to do that. So it's really, it's at the discretion of the faculty. So you might not get a course available all the time. Okay, so what does it mean for the industry? Skills shortage, which has been talked about quite a bit in the news. So this is from ISC Squared in 2022. They did a survey. I have some updated stats, but this one is from a few years ago. You indicated that your organization has a shortage of cybersecurity staff. What do you think are the biggest causes for this shortage? 43% said my organization can't find enough qualified talent. Okay, so that was from a few years ago. ISC does a survey every year. So last year they did the survey, asked the same question. Do we think that number went up or down? 44% now can't find people to hire with the skills we need. We recognize that this is a problem. Students just aren't getting the right skill set when they graduate. So the junior devs that you're hiring just don't have those skill sets, right? So those job applications, which you put, must have this, this, and this, and they want all these cyber skills, they just don't have them. So we recognize the problem. Did we fix it? No. It's 3 years later or 2 years later for this survey, we still have the same problem. And it's a domino effect. Like I said earlier, the onus now shifts from the educational institution to teach these students to now the industry or the business has to train them. Training costs a lot of money. It takes a lot of time. Who here has, well, we've all onboarded, but who here has onboarded recently to a new job? There's lots of like, okay, I got to go through HR stuff, right? I got to do my security awareness, which is nothing to do with cybersecurity. What is phishing? What is all that kind of stuff? I probably have to read like some employee handbook, maybe go through like an acceptable use policy. There's lots. So now we're going to say, okay, but for our developers, do all that, but also let's do like a crash course, maybe a week, because we want you to start coding and doing stuff. Let's do a crash course on cybersecurity. That's just probably not going to happen. And I know some organizations are doing this, but other organizations, they just simply don't have the time or the budget to do that. They'd rather hire somebody who has these skill sets already, which then leads them to hiring senior developers more than junior developers, because juniors just don't have that skill set. And then if we're not hiring junior devs ever, we're never going to get a senior dev. Like we have senior devs now, great, when they retire or move on, or they move to a different role, we don't have a good kind of repository of junior devs to build up. In your opinion, to what degree does this shortage of cybersecurity staff put your organization at risk? So 57% were either moderate or extreme risk. Again, we recognize the problem. We're just not doing anything about it. Okay, so there is a lot of security education taking place. I just kind of want to talk about the difference here. So roughly it's a $10 billion industry for security awareness training. Who here has taken security awareness training in the last 12 months? Right? Yeah, I think it's kind of now mandatory for all organizations. I have a Udemy course with about security awareness training. It has about like 85,000 students have gone through it. So it's a fairly popular course on Udemy, but that's because organizations have to do it, right? You got it for compliance. If you're doing like PCI compliance, if you're doing ISO 27001, SOC 2, there's lots of different compliance frameworks. They all involve some sort of training. But this isn't really helping your developers, right? People who are actually putting code, doing PRs, who are putting code into production, this isn't helping them. Yes, it's great that they know what phishing is, and it's great that they know what a strong password is. But what about what an SQL injection is, right? What about cross-site scripting? What about code injections? What about this, that, and whatever? They don't have that skill set. So yes, this is a booming industry for security education, but it's not a booming industry for developer education. So there's multiple problems to address here, and I kind of want to go through each one by one. One, developer growth is outpacing security. It's just, maybe you see some conflicting things in the news, but there is a need for cybersecurity talent. I was fortunate enough to work with the White House for the previous 2 years with the last administration. There was this initiative called the ONCD, which was the Office of the National Cybersecurity Director. There's an initiative called Service for America, where we were looking to train developers, and we used Sneak Learn, which I work on, and it's free education. We use that to help train developers. That initiative has been shut down now, but for the last 2 years, previously, it was really, really good. So we are graduating, or lots of people are going into this field. There's lots of developers that we see, but there is lots of cybersecurity openings as well too. 3.5 million, roughly, estimate for these jobs that are open. So developer growth, big, and again, these developers, they don't know anything about cybersecurity. Needs are changing fast here. So required skills are continuously evolving with new technology and business transformation. Now, I was talking to somebody last night at we had a speakers dinner, and I was saying that, when I was in my undergrad, which was about 20 years ago now, I was learning assembly language, which there's nothing wrong with assembly language. And I think I kind of brought it up to the wrong crowd, because at the table, there's a few people who still use assembly language. But it's not necessarily the most used language. Who here still uses assembly language? Yeah, again, wrong audience. So a few people that do. So at the institution that I got my degree at, assembly was being taught. 20 years later, I now teach there part-time, still being taught, which nothing inherently wrong with that. There's some niche, obviously, jobs that still use assembly. But languages like Rust, which have gotten really popular, Go, which have gotten really popular, still aren't being taught, right? Students just aren't, those are the needs that people have, but those still aren't being taught. So the skills that you learn in, let's say, first-year university may not be the skills that you need 5 years later or 4 years later when you're graduating. There might be a completely different need from the industry. This is a job from Indeed, AI prompt writer. My guidance counselor never told me that I could grow up and be an AI prompt writer, right? That just wasn't a job that was available. Even if we go back a couple of years ago, this wasn't really a job that was available. Now, is a skill set needed? Probably going in the future, we all need to know how to prompt better than what we're prompting, right? If you ask ChatGPT or Claude for a login, you probably want to add at the end, also make it secure, right? Because if you don't, it just might not be secure. So probably a skill that we need. Nothing, I don't think anyone here could feel confident about this.
Why did you block out the pay? I'm very curious.
This one was, I don't know why I blocked it. I mainly wanted to block out the company name.
I might quit my job and just, that's fun.
I'll let you know the pay was very, very low. It wasn't that high.
You need 3 of these jobs.
Yeah. You'll have to, couple different computers work all at once. But this was I'm confident here no one ever learned about prompting in their studies. Maybe future generations will. It'll be part of the curriculum, but at least it's not part of the curriculum now. Here's another one, senior data scientist, that's a common job title, but here, look at, you need 3+ years of industry experience with ML and LLM. Probably not a lot of people have that, unless you specifically studied that, but you wouldn't have studied LM or ML, machine language or machine learning in your undergrad. Likely, maybe you took a course on it, but you definitely didn't specialize in it. Unless maybe you did your master's or something like that, then you might have the experience, but you still probably wouldn't have 3 years experience. This is really just getting popular now. The use of LLMs is really just kind of exploding in the last couple of years. Probably very few people would have that 3 years experience even today, unless, again, you studied some niche area. I talked about this already, but on average, it costs about $1,000 to train a single employee. And that's just holistic training, security awareness, onboarding, all that kind of stuff. If you want a specialized training, it's going to cost even more. So again, we're kind of shifting that responsibility, but training is important. Who here has ever done specialized training for part of their work? What'd you take? What'd you do?
We did a whole SQL class that talked about
Oh, perfect.
as the development side of things.
Yeah.
On the cybersecurity side.
Okay, that's still awesome though. And sorry, your hand was up too?
We have, I work for the pretty big company, but we do like any kind of specialized training through a couple of platforms called Immersive Labs and Presidio.
Yes. Yeah. And those are great. Cost money, right? But they are great. And sorry, there was another hand up on this side. Yeah.
Dozens of trainings of various degrees of value.
Yeah. I was lucky enough where I worked at before, they paid for my CISSP, which was fairly expensive. It's not a cheap certificate. So I did the training as well too. I did it back in 2000. Who has their CISSP? Have you taken it recently? Yeah, so before it used to be a 6-hour exam. It was real tough. Now it's a 3-hour exam. It's a little bit different. But I was lucky enough. So I got flown to Boston. I did a 5-day training, wrote my exam on the 6th day, really just crammed for it. But kind of rare that employers will pay for that. But training is expensive. And so just the general training, when I was a director of IT, we had to get all of our employees do security awareness training. These platforms, while relatively cheap, they still cost money. If you have 500 employees, it's, there's a lot of expense to it. If you want that specific training of, hey, let's learn about how to do this securely, you need to use specialized platforms. Immersive Labs is one of them that does that, but they're definitely not cheap at all. Okay, updating old materials is another issue, and this is specifically looking at higher education. The courses that you get may be very old. There's I didn't want to name it here, but there's a very popular computer security textbook from 2004, which is still being used in a lot of classrooms. It's a great book. I'm not going to say anything bad about the book. It is extremely outdated. Sorry?
Can I guess which one you're talking about?
You probably know which one it is.
The
But
green book?
yeah, but it is very outdated, right? Some of the core concepts of like what is hashing, great. That's core concepts, not changing. What is encryption? Great, that's not changing. But when it talks about like, hey, MD5 is a great hashing algorithm, not anymore, right? So these materials that are out there are very, very old, but still being used. It's a few different reasons. So when I got hired, I wanted to teach full-time. That was, I taught part-time for a long time. I wanted to teach full-time. I was a director of IT. A full-time faculty job came up. I thought, I got the PhD. I might as well just try teaching full-time. Like I said, I didn't love it. But one of the reasons was that when I got hired during the interview process, they said, hey, we want to bring you on to update all of our material. It's very, very old. And I said, sure. They said, you are our first hire in 30 years. The age gap between you and the next professor is 30+ years. And I said, sure, like I will, this sounds like a good challenge. I'll do it. So I moved to that institution. I left the director of IT job. And then I was at that first department meeting that I had with all the other faculty. And I said, okay, let's start updating the material. Like I reviewed all the material in the course of the whole 4-year program. said, let's update the material. And the other faculty said, no. I said, okay, but we should really, I looked at your slides. They still have 1998 in the top corner. We really need to update these slides. It's incredibly out of date. And the professor, he said, no, like I'm comfortable teaching this. I've taught this for the last 30 years. I'm going to continue to teach it. I said, okay, well, let's revisit this later. So I spent that whole summer updating. I taught 5 courses. I updated all 5 courses that I taught. So they're relevant. They're really good. Not to brag, but they're better than what they were. So I started teaching. Students were really happy with it. I got complaints saying, hey, I go from this class to your class. It's night and day. And I said, okay, yeah, we're working on this. So then came the Christmas break we had. So we had a couple weeks off. We had some faculty meetings. I said, okay, hey, I updated my 5 courses. It went really well. Let's work on your courses. And they said, no, we're just not doing it. So I fought this battle for 3.5 years. And that's one of the reasons why I left the job, was just because nothing was changing. And a lot of it is because professors are just very comfortable teaching what they know. And I'm not trying to like badmouth any professors. It's a very tough job. There is a lot of work, but there needs to be some updating happening. And in my experience at the multiple institutions that I've taught at, it's just not happening. Security is also not in the natural critical path of software development. This is probably going to be talked about a little bit throughout the next couple of days. But there's this whole developer experience. So there's kind of 3 parts to it. There's like your flow state, which is kind of when you're in the zone, you're coding, you're just trying to get stuff done. We all know, we've probably seen studies that if you're interrupted while you're coding, it takes you quite a bit of a while to get back into that flow state. All these meetings that we get brought into just kind of interrupt everything. There's a feedback loop. So this could be something like, hey, I've compiled my code. I got an error. That's feedback. Let me fix it, compile, and kind of get feedback. Or if you're using a security scanner, let me code, do the scan. Oh, there's a vulnerability. Let me fix it and kind of come back. So that's really good too. It kind of keeps you in the zone. It keeps you getting feedback so you can stay in the zone. And then there's the cognitive load. So how difficult is the problem that I'm facing? Is it a simple thing that I need to do that I can do it quickly, where I don't need to really think much? Or am I going to have to actually take my hands off the keyboard and think about this, or maybe do some research? So all 3 of those things kind of create what we call the developer experience. I just want to talk about the middle one here. So the higher cognitive load. So if let's say you scan code and you get a vulnerability. So maybe it's like I'll just stick with SQL injection. Very, very common. So you say, okay, well, I'll have an SQL injection on line 500. Let me take a look at it. But you don't know anything about SQL injection, right? You maybe heard the term, but you don't understand what it means. That is going to be a high cognitive load on you, because now you're going to have to actually do some research and try to figure out, okay, how do I fix it? What it is, how do I fix it? So what do I need to do? How do I actually implement that in the language that I'm using, and going through that whole process? So it does take a significant amount of time if you don't have that knowledge. If you start getting all these kind of niche vulnerabilities that maybe, could be like cross-site scripting, or could be something that maybe you haven't ever heard of before, that cognitive load gets even higher and higher, because now you need to do more research, you need to figure out more stuff. And so it almost ruins the developer experience, right? If you're doing code and you're getting, if you're coding and you get a vulnerability pop up, that's almost just takes you right out of your flow state, because it's like, okay, now I actually have to research what this is. Who cares about security? So it kind of ruins the experience for a lot of developers. There's a new problem, and it's a big one. So I would say there's 2 major risks today by having your developers untrained. The first one is that they're writing insecure code, which I think at some point we've all written insecure code before. It just happens, especially if you're trying to get a proof of concept, or you're trying to get something up and running quickly. You don't really care about security. So writing insecure code, bad. The second one is AI is generating insecure code. If you don't know what insecure code looks like, you're not going to be able to recognize it when AI generates you code. That's just kind of, they work together. Who here has ever asked AI to generate code? Don't be ashamed. Okay. Who here has ever gotten insecure code by AI that's been generated? Yeah. So for those who raised your hand, at least you have the ability to recognize what insecure code is. But imagine you're a third year or fourth year computer science student, or you're a junior developer, never taken a security course in your life. You don't know what code injection is. You don't know what anything is. And you get this code and you say, well, it runs, right? Looks good to me. And so then you implement it. That's sort of the biggest problem that we're having now, because we are generating a lot of code. So Gen AI, more code, faster, we know that, but there's also more risk. So I think the next slide has it. I think I want to say 46% roughly of all code generated has vulnerabilities in it, at least today, right? That number is probably going to get better as these models get better and as we learn how to prompt better. But there's lots more insecure code being generated now than there ever was before. And then, citizen devs, you can say, I hate the term, the vibe coders, right? People who are just trying to prompt their way to an application. We're generating a lot of code, but again, it's just not secure code. Okay, so we recognize the problem. I spent the last 30 minutes talking about the problem. Let's maybe talk about some solutions. So one of the things that I try to do, both when I was working in academia full-time and now that I'm in the industry, just trying to bring these two closer together. I did a partnership with my current work with NYU, where their students actually take our content, our developer training as part of their curriculum. Really, really cool. We're trying to work on partnerships with other universities as well too, because again, all of our content's free. We're really just trying to educate developers. But I think if you can get the industry and academia to just work closer together, it's benefit for both parties. One, academia benefits by getting some people who are currently doing the work to help advise and say, hey, you know what, maybe let's update your curriculum a little bit. Let's have a course on this. Let's introduce these topics. That would be really beneficial. The industry benefits because the graduates that are coming out of these programs are better educated. So it really is a win-win for all, but there's not a lot of partnership between academia and industry. Some institutions are better than others, but they're not all great. So partnerships, a lot of schools, a lot of universities and colleges have advisory boards where you could volunteer and be an advisor, and they meet sometimes 2-3 times a year and say, hey, what's the industry want? What's the industry looking for? I've been a part of these advisory boards where sometimes it's very local. So if it's like say a small institution that has most of their population be local or from the state or provincial, they might say that, hey, we have a big organization, has 500 devs locally. We are looking for developers who know how to code in Rust. Can you maybe look at introducing Rust into your curriculum, even if it's just a course, this way they have something. So those advisory boards are really beneficial. And so if anyone here, is interested, look to your local school, see if there's an advisory board. You can give your industry experience, which you all have, give it back to kind of the community and give it to the institution. So those partnerships are really good. Also partnerships with placements or co-ops, or I don't know what you call them here. We have both. Institutions, they can say, hey, we're going to partner with this company. We're going to have a co-op opportunity or work placement opportunity where our grads or our current students could spend a semester or spend the summer and work for this company with the hopes that maybe they hire them eventually, but they also get some like real world experience. I have a co-op starting for me in June. She is from Northeastern University, and this is going to be great for her to get some like actual experience at a big organization and kind of learn stuff, and so it's great. But look, if your organization has the appetite for it, maybe look at bringing a co-op student. In Canada, it's obviously much different than how it works here, but in Canada, the government actually gives you funding, and so they'll sometimes pay like 80 cents on the dollar. And so if you're looking to hire a co-op student for $1 an hour, just using easy math here, they'll pay 80 cents of it. So you only need to pay them 20 cents an hour, and the government's covering the rest. So there may be opportunities like that state to state where you can actually look at funding and bring on these students. This is a tough one. Making changes in higher education is like trying to get a cruise ship to do a U-turn. For anyone who's ever done the teaching before, or maybe even worked full-time or worked closely with academia, getting schools to make changes to anything takes a long time. I want to walk you through a real example. Uses a different language here, but it can sometimes take 1 to 2 years to update a course. which sounds insane, right? You think of like, imagine a customer said, hey, can you make this change for me? And you said, yeah, sure. Like, we'll put it on the roadmap. See you in 2 years. Like, it just wouldn't happen. So let's take an example here. So let's say an institution is teaching COBOL, right? Very, very old language, although there is demand for it. So they're taking COBOL in their first year course. So let's say September 2025, this upcoming semester, they're taking Intro to Programming. Students are looking at it, seeing COBOL, maybe not thrilled about it. So you say, okay, you know what, November 2024, so we'll go back a little bit. Some students have already applied to universities, right? Grade 12s or whatever you call them here, I don't know, sorry. Seniors, thank you. Seniors have already applied. And so marketing materials have gone out, the website's been updated, you simply just can't change it yet, right? So you say, okay, well, we can't change it for 2025. We want to swap out COBOL for Java or Python. So we're going to need to do that for September 2026. It's just how it's going to be. So you may recognize in November saying, okay, you know what, let's change this. Let's get Python in here. And then you'll be told by the Senate or the advisory committee or whoever it is at your institution, will say, yeah, we'll make this change for September 2026. Keep in mind, it's November 2024. So it's almost 2 years it takes to make a change. Every institution varies, but you have an academic council, faculty council, quality control council. Sometimes the government has a say in what you need to do. I'm from Ontario, and so we have an Ontario board that dictates what we have to submit our changes to them for them to approve it. So it takes a significant amount of time. If you're changing, like they always say the rule is like 10% or less of a course, sometimes you don't need to go through every board. But if you're making a change such as like, I want to change a language of a course, that can take up to 2 years. So it's very, very slow. The tech industry, as we know, is moving very, very fast. And so if you wanted to say, yeah, you know what, let's get an AI course at our school. I think it's super relevant. There's lots going on. See you in 2 years, right? And then at that point, that course probably needs to be updated 2 years from now. Imagine building a course right now for AI with today's current stuff going on, and then having that same material be relevant in 2 years. Some of it will be relevant, for sure, but some of it's just going to be missing. So the whole academia moves slow. Sometimes I think people who don't work in academia don't realize how slow it actually moves. It is just sometimes painfully and frustratingly slow. Okay, this is just where I want to talk about a little bit about what I've been working on for the last 3 years. So build fundamental security skills to create secure code. There's the Sneak Learn. Has anyone ever heard of Sneak Learn before? Okay, so you can access it learn.sneak.io. Again, you don't even need to sign in. All the content there is free. I've been a big advocate of free knowledge, and so I don't want to have any of our content gated. None of it is. So you can we have about 80 some lessons on there right now for different vulnerabilities, all free. And we have some learning paths available. It's just kind of, it's great. I know I'm patting myself on the back here right now, but we are really trying to do what we can to help educate developers. And I think we've been doing a really good job of it. This is a white paper that I wrote. I'll put the QR code back up at the end, but developer training in cybersecurity. I wrote this white paper a few months ago. It's been passed out before. It's just some good content in there too about, just basically kind of this presentation in paper form. And then this is an email that I got, another real email from a student. This is after I introduced and created a cybersecurity course. Hi, Professor Biocchi. I just want to thank you for the course. This was by far the most useful course I've taken and learned, yada, yada, yada. So this was a cybersecurity course. I got the students to, their final project was to build a movie review tool. So it used APIs from Open Movie Database, and it used the free Gemini API. And so what would happen is there was a login page, so people would log in. So they learned how to do authentication. They learned all that kind of stuff. Once they were logged in, they would search for a movie in a search box, which would connect to the Open Movie Database. So if you, I think the example I gave at the time was Barbie, because Barbie just came out. So if you search for Barbie, it would pop up. You click on it. Then you would give it a star rating out of 5. And then you would click, you can leave some comments if you want to, and then you would click generate. And that would then tie into Gemini, and the prompt, students would write their own prompt saying that Give me a review for a 3-star move for a user that gave a 3-star review and left these comments, and the prompts would be whatever. It would generate this whole review. And then that would get saved to a database, and the next person who looks up Barbie, they would see this review. It was a fairly simple project, but students had like 12 weeks to work on it. They learned a lot. They got to use AI a little bit. It was a really, really cool thing, and security was built in mind all from the beginning. So they learned how to do proper authentication. They learned how to do, when you're dealing with user input, how to sanitize, all that kind of stuff, all that cool thing. So, anyways, there is hope. There are, not just me. There's lots of professors out there who are trying to inject some cool security stuff, but it's mainly part-time professors who have really no authority or no say. Anyways, that's everything I want to talk about. Thank you all very, very much. We have some time left. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have, but thank you again. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I had a question. At the beginning, when you talked about the junior versus senior developer thing,
Yeah.
I come from sort of the manufacturing, the trade space, internal IT, and like in those environments, and the sentiment seems to be very similar in those spaces. Of there's a big push for people to go to colleges and move away from the trade schools, and then now you've got the big age difference between what is a guy who's an expert at welding versus what would be juniors coming in.
Yeah.
And trying to bridge that gap seems to be very similar to what you're talking about. It comes down to training and education and getting these people into these fields and getting them into this environment to learn the same things, and cybersecurity is going to be following the same suit.
Yeah.
So I guess my question is, how do you best leverage what is existing senior developer type people? How do you get them to get buy-in and training the next generation as well? Because that's a really important knowledge base of experience that comes in from historical stuff, even up to now, where they've been doing this for a long time. How do you best get junior developers to sort of learn that and get into that environment? Get senior developers to teach them in that same way.
Yeah, so that's really tough, and it comes down to the culture of the organization, a part of it. So we at our work, we run these lunch and learns, which are typically done by senior developers, and all it is like it's like a 30-minute session, sometimes a little bit longer, and it's a cool problem that they've solved, and they present it. And a lot of times it's like these junior devs who will come to these lunch and learns. They'll see like firsthand how a senior dev solved a complex problem. Then they can ask questions. Typically, at least it might be a culture thing, but typically we see a lot of these senior devs want to do this. They want to talk and show how they, it's a little bit of a humble brag. Hey, there's this complex problem. I solved it. Nobody else could, so come watch me explain it. But it's a good learning lesson for everyone. Even other senior devs attend. It's a good learning lesson for everyone. So I think if you can build a culture of education, which it's easier said than done, but if you can build an internal culture of education where passing knowledge down doesn't feel threatening. I think sometimes in some organizations, it's like, well, I don't want to give away my secrets because, only I know how to do this. It makes me less expendable, which that mentality, I don't think gets you very far. But I think if you can create that culture of education, it goes a long way. But it's tough to do. It's very tough to do.
So I am also a professor and I teach cybersecurity classes. So I would love to have a conversation.
Sure.
Things I notice, your opinion on what level of responsibility do the college students have to take their own initiative to fill that gap between what is being taught in school and maybe to be better prepared.
Yeah, so I think right now it's all on them. I think they have to have that desire to do that, but they also have to have the knowledge. I think right now with a lot of students that I talk to, you don't know what you don't know, and they just simply don't know that they should be learning about cybersecurity. There's some really good introductory certs out there. I'm not saying like everyone needs a CISSP, but there's like a Security Plus certification. There's lots of like junior certs that I think students can take that are relatively cheap to help learn that. And sometimes I know if colleges partner with these organizations, the certs, they get discount codes for students and stuff like that. I think the onus right now is fully on the students, which it shouldn't be. The onus should be on the academic institution. They're the ones who should be educating their developers or educating their students. But yeah, a lot of times students just don't know that they need to know this until it's too late, right? They already graduate, they're looking to apply for jobs, maybe they're doing some interviews, and they're like, oh, I don't, they get asked a question about, hey, how do you do secure authentication? They're like, oh, I don't know. Like, I've never had to do that before. So yeah, the onus is on them right now, but I think really that should be shifting to the institution. It's unfair to put that onus on the employer. It's a lot of burden on them to train. It's unfair to put the onus on the student because they just don't know and they're already doing studies, right? And so I think it's the university or the college.
We tried doing workshops because we can't teach specific technologies in our classes because of the loan process.
Yeah.
So like we started doing Friday afternoon shops like to get hands-on experience, and we can't get anybody to show up because they're so busy with their course load and
Yeah.
everything else. So I'm like, well, crap, we're trying.
Yeah.
If they're not showing up, then what do we do? Like,
Yeah, so at the places that I worked at, we ran into the same thing. So let's say the course runs from September to mid-December. So September is essentially a write-off. Students are just kind of onboarding. They're getting to know their classes. It's busy time. Students typically take 5 courses at once, and so it's very, very busy. So we say September's a write-off. December, just a write-off anyways, right? You only have half a month, and there's exams, so that's kind of a write-off. And then it's like late October, November, there's midterms, and students are studying, so it's like, okay, there's a good 2-week, potentially 3-week period where that's a write-off. So it's like, okay, out of a 12-week semester, I only have a couple weeks to put this in, and students also have lives, right? They want to, meet with friends and party and do whatever. So it's like, where do we fit this into? And you're also looking at, we didn't want to do a cybersecurity for first-year students simply because they didn't have the core concepts of some stuff, right? You treat every student like they don't know anything. Some students are taking computer science because they're just interested, but they've never programmed before. So we're like, okay, let's aim for 3rd, 4th-year students, but 4th-year students are working on their thesis sometimes. It's like, it's tough. It is real tough because students really don't have time. It is like, there's a lot of young people here. You probably weren't students too long ago. There's a lot of stuff going on in those 12 weeks. And so to say, yeah, come out on a Thursday night and let's learn about cybersecurity. It's like, oh, okay, I don't really have time for that, but you'll get some students show up. But we had really low numbers as well too. And for people who are running it, like I was a part-time faculty member, I wasn't being paid for it. I was just volunteering my time, right? So you got to find people who are able to volunteer time to do it, which is also tough. It's a real tough problem.
So I recently stopped doing adjunct teaching.
Yeah.
Teaching with University of Washington, introed I in cyber and digital forensics. And the main reason why I stopped is the sheer level of entitlement coming out of the students and the complete lack of support from the administration. I literally just had a student from 3 terms ago want me to regrade, allow them to resubmit and regrade everything. I told them, I'm disinclined to act as to your request. Means no.
Yeah.
And 2 semesters ago.
Yeah.
So, how do we deal with that aside from filtering them out earlier in the process and with the schools where you have to have a pulse and be a resident and you're guaranteed admission? That's kind of difficult because we've decided it's a society that people should have degrees.
Yeah, it's tough. I don't have an answer for that. It's real tough. I once had a class of 18 students, so a relatively small class. 9 failed, and so it was a 50% failure rate. Doesn't look good on the institution. Doesn't look good on me. Saying that I failed half my class. It was really students just weren't showing up. They didn't submit anything. It was like on the final day of class, they're like, oh hey, can I submit the last 5 assignments? And it's like, no, you can't. And so. Sorry, and so it's really tough.
And I tried to be fairly flexible with
what
happens.
But, yeah.
I need to see a dress report or a selfie from an ER.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I'm being hauled off, so you can yell at that man right there. But I'm happy to continue this conversation outside. But thank you all very much.